What up, Marcus Dynasty Dads? We are going to be talking about 2023 rookies. Now, post-Super Bowl, we're going to have more and more people start to watch film. They're going to be watching where these rookies end up going through the combine, landing spots, all of this. We're going to start getting into more of the thick of it here. We do some analytic process as well, but this is a summary of the 2023 class, comparing it even to some other classes in certain positions as well. And there has been a lot of hype for the 2023 class. We want to be able to say, hey, is the hype warranted, or is this going to be some false hope for a lot of people? And we're going to start off, and why I want to start off the running back position is because it holds the 101. It is Bijan Robinson. Just like last year was Breece Hall, this year's Bijan Robinson. Breece Hall was flirting into that top 3, top 5 running back category when he was drafted as a New York Jet. Even before that, he was kind of into that top 3, top 5 category. And we knew that even in Superflex that he was going to be a top 2-round startup pick. But Bijan is even better than that. And right now, Bijan is my running back number 1 in Dynasty. He's a lot of people's running back 1 in Dynasty. I mean, you are talking about a generational type talent. Look even at Ezekiel Elliott in his fantasy career and how many number or RB1 finishes. Same for Kamara. Bijan is just an absolute all-around running back. It's going to be very, very hard to see him. His bust percentage is going to be extremely low. So I think when you have that type of elite talent at a position that honestly is going to be in desperate measures here in a few months, because you're going to have a lot of running backs falling off the cliff. The Kamaras, the Mixon, the Chubbs, the CMCs, the Dalvin Cooks, the Zekes, the Leonard Fournettes, all of these running backs are either falling off the cliff or have already started to fall off the cliff, or maybe are going to the bottom of the cliff like Zeke and Fournette, it seems like. So you have a lot of running backs falling off, and you have a lot of need by teams that are desperately wanting a top-tier running back. So the running back class reminds me a little bit of the 2020 class when you had Jonathan Taylor, and you're going to have some other running backs that are going to be really good top 10 running backs. You're going to have Jahmyr Gibbs, who I think is already a top 7, 8 running back. I have him at number 6. So I think Jahmyr Gibbs, who is the closest thing to Jamal Charles that I can potentially put my finger to. I think that when you have 2 top 6, top 7 running backs in Dynasty, that is why this class, which I think is a top-heavy class, I think you're going to have you're going to have a lot of people talking about the hype about this 2023 class. And I remember when people talked about it in 2021, they were like, don't trade all your 2022 picks for 2023. And now we look at that and go, man, if you traded a bunch of your 2022 picks for 2023, you're probably making a neutral move unless you're getting into that top 3, top 4, or you need that quarterback. And we'll talk about quarterbacks here shortly. But we have Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, and the running backs 3 through 10 is all going to be landing spot, draft capital. Whether it's Devin Achane, whether it's Zach Charbonnet, whether it's Zach Evans, whether it is Sean Tucker, there is a lot of running backs into that category once again that need to get that draft capital. Get that round 3 draft capital. Maybe even have some sneak to round 2. You're probably going to have some that end up falling to round 4 that won't be as good. And so you're going to have some of these running backs. Which ones are going to be the Trey Sermons? Which ones are going to be the Damian Pierces? Like, which one? You're going to have this always happens in every single draft class. I don't think the depth of this running back class is as good as the 2020 class when we had 5 running backs that seemed to be, at least prospect-wise, top prospects, especially when we're talking about 1 QB leagues. I think the running back class is not as strong as that class, but I wouldn't be surprised if we have 4 running backs drafted in round 1, maybe even 5 running backs drafted in round 1, if we have some players like Zach Charbonnet or Zach Evans or anything like that ends up becoming draft capital and landing spot here. So again, lots to figure out in the running back position, but that's just where you know there's going to be a bigger drop off there. Quarterbacks, we finally have some good quarterbacks. Kenny Pickett was Malik Willis was very bad. One of the worst quarterback classes probably in the last 10 years, and I talked about this quarterback class being, 2022 quarterback class being one of the weakest classes that I have ever seen in my lifetime, and I thought 2023, we might get an overcorrection a little bit here. I think there's 2 quarterbacks that are good. They're not Trevor Lawrence level. I mean, Trevor Lawrence, I remember Trevor Lawrence being like the generational talent. And then you had Justin Fields, Trey Lance, and Zach Wilson. I could easily see there's going to be 4 quarterbacks here. You're going to have, and I think 3 of them are going to be drafted very similar. Maybe Anthony Richardson, number 4, gets snuck into that group because of his high mobility level. But you're going to have Will Levis. You're going to have CJ Stroud. You're going to have Bryce Young. All 4 quarterbacks, very similar to the mind that there's going to be quarterbacks between 10 and like 17 in Dynasty. Or maybe even if Richardson get up into that 17 category. We talked about that being the Fields, Lance, and Wilson kind of area too. And Fields drafting-wise. And so Fields has definitely risen above that and, of course, is ahead of this. I just want to kind of state that. I'm not saying that Justin Fields is in that category now. Justin Fields is above that. But look at what Lance has kind of struggled to do, or Wilson has now plummeted off. And so you might get a Will Levis being a Mac Jones production in his rookie year. You might get Anthony Richardson being a healthy-ish Trey Lance. I mean, Trey Lance, I think, a little bit more mobile, but Anthony Richardson has a lot of tools here. So the quarterbacks are good. They're not great. I don't have any of them in my top 10 in my Dynasty rankings. Maybe one of them sneaks in. I think my best bet would be Bryce Young, but I mean, who knows? I'm just waiting for, again, draft capital with the NFL. If they're top 10 pick, they're going to get playing time, and that's what we care about. I don't make millions of dollars doing this. They do if they're correct. So they have a lot more money on the line. So that's quarterbacks. Quarterbacks are okay. So running backs, again, really top heavy with a couple of running good. I mean, you have legendary or like generational talent. You have another amazing running back, Jahmyr Gibbs. Then you have a big fall off. Not a big fall off, but a fall off. We'll figure out who's into that tier 3 here, end of first, early second. Maybe somebody gets really high draft capital and sneaks up a little bit further. Quarterbacks, good, but a lot better than 2022. But you're not looking at classes that are going to have a generational talent. You're just not looking. I don't even have them probably even into that Fields. Fields was my QB2 when with the Trevor Lawrence draft class as well, and so I had Fields as number 2, and so I thought that both Fields and Trevor Lawrence much higher prospect level than CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, at least fantasy wise too, because Justin Fields had a lot more mobility than CJ Stroud and Bryce Young. So if I'm taking Ohio State quarterback, I'm taking Fields. Anyways, so wide receivers, JSN. Jackson Smith-Njigba is a great wide receiver. My wide receiver 1. He's in the tier of Jordan Addison and Quentin Johnston. But Quentin Johnston, big-bodied. I think he's going to need to find a really good landing spot. He's going to be the biggest landing spot dependent if he stays at 3 or if he ends up moving out of that tier. Jordan Addison, skinny, thin, but I mean, I really like his tape more than his analytics, so there's that. And then JSN has everything. He was just hurt last year. But on a roster with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, which I will hammer that into your guys' brains as much as I possibly can. He was the best wide receiver. Now Marvin Harrison Jr. is better. Okay, well that's just because Ohio State is that great at producing NFL prospects at the both offensive and defensive level, besides potentially quarterback. But they produce great running backs, great wide receivers, great defensive ends. They produce great players besides potentially the quarterback position. Again, Justin Fields is kind of trying to break that trend. But I think that JSN is my lock-in one unless he goes to, again, Baltimore or New England and Jordan Addison goes somewhere amazing. Or Quentin Johnston goes to somewhere absolutely amazing. Wide receivers do have a fall off here as well. I mean, you have Keyshawn Boutte and you have Josh Downs, and you have Zay Flowers. You have a bunch of wide receivers, and that is why, really, that if you have a top 8-9 pick, I am trying to move up. If I have 10, 11, 12, I am trying to move up into this little category here of 7, 8, 9. Because especially in Superflex, if not in Superflex, you're talking about a couple of more quarterbacks taken away. And really, and so we're going to talk about tight end too. Tight end, we're just going to go through quick, and then I'll talk a little bit about strategy. Actually, I'll probably even save the tier stuff for tomorrow so you guys can understand more tier stuff. We'll talk about tier stuff soon. But Michael Mayer, tight end, great tight end, TJ Hawkinson light. You're gonna get a mid tight end, not a top 5 tight end, not a horrible tight end. He's a good tight end, but you have some huge risky upside tight ends like Dalton Kincaid. Love him, love his tape too. Very risky. He could end up being ahead of Michael Mayer in a couple of years. I mean, he has that ability here. So I just think that the tight ends in this class are going to be much better than the tight ends that we have seen previously, not named the Kyle Pitts and Pat Freiermuth year. We've really had some years that have struggled, whether it's the Cole Kmet year. Last year, I mean, it was just not a good year as well. I mean, we just have had And last year, I guess, wasn't horrible. I mean, we've had some hints of players, whether it's Bellinger or Dulcich and stuff, but I think you're going to have a couple tight ends here that are going to end up being fantasy worthy. And so there we go. We have a decent draft class. I don't think it's amazing by any means, and I don't think it's horrible by any means. I think it's a decent draft class that if you look at it compared to 2020, you're not going to have some of the extreme high-end talent. At the tight end position, at the quarterback position, like you're gonna have a great wide receiver group, or at least a great top group. And really, this class reminds me of last year's class, minus that it has a lot better quarterbacks and a lot better tight ends. So if you like last year's draft class, this year's draft class, JSN better. My favorite wide receiver if you combine them both draft classes. Bijan Robinson, my favorite running back if you combine both draft classes. CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, my favorite quarterback if you combine both draft classes. And Michael Mayer, my favorite tight end if you combine both draft classes. So if you look at 2022, you compare it to 2023. 2023, slightly better. Well, not slightly better. I mean, it's a step above than 2022. So there we go. If that helps you compare that, I hope that helps solve some different things. Some different questions in your head. All right. We'll see you guys again soon. Peace out. Take care.